Hey guys, what's going on? So a few days ago I created an Ajax crash course where we looked at Ajax and XHR, the XML HTTP object, which is used to make asynchronous calls from your browser to a server and get data asynchronously and so on. Now there was a comment from someone that had mentioned that they think that XHR is outdated. So I don't personally agree with that. I don't think that those terms, outdated, deprecated, should be thrown around. And the reason for that is because when someone is learning JavaScript, like let's say right now someone wants to learn JavaScript, they have to learn about XHR and Ajax. They can't just go right to the fetch API. Because they're going to run into this at least for the next 10 years. You have new standards like fetch that aren't even fully compatible. A lot of the different parts aren't even fully compatible with every browser. So these are very new technologies. So you can't just throw away the old ones, okay? Especially when they're very reliable. They've been used for a while and they're used in millions and millions of applications. So I don't agree with that, but I do agree that you should learn newer standards. Okay, I believe that you should learn the older ones, wrap your head around that, and then move on to things like fetch. Just like with JavaScript, I believe you should learn ES5 first and then move on to ES6 because you're going to run into it. But enough of that. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on fetch today. We're going to build this sandbox thing here. I actually added some Bootstrap styles and made it look nice. We're not going to do that till the end because I want to focus on the API first. And then we'll just, for fun, we'll make it look nice. But basically, we're going to do kind of the same stuff that we did within the Ajax crash course, where we fetch data from a text file asynchronously. We fetched from a local JSON file. We also fetch from an external API. Okay, we use the GitHub API in the Ajax video. We're going to use the JSON placeholder API in this video, which allows you to make all kinds of requests. So basically this button here, if I click it, it's going to get the text asynchronously from a text file. This one will get JSON and get all the users and display them in the browser. And then this one will actually fetch from the JSON placeholder, and it'll get 100 posts with titles and bodies, and we'll put that in the browser. All right, we're also going to make a post request to the API. You'll see if I say test, actually let me open up my console. So if I say test and then test body and we submit, that'll actually make a post request using fetch, and it'll give us a response. You'll see the ID is 101. Initially it's 100 different posts, so the ID being 101 shows you that we've basically added a new post. Okay, it doesn't physically get added to their database, but it does make a successful response. So that's what we'll be building. We're also going to learn a little bit about some new ES6 technologies like arrow functions and template strings. You can see we're using a template string here, which is much easier than doing the old concatenation, which is what we did in the Ajax course. But like I said, you should know both ways, okay? So yeah, that's what we'll be doing, guys. Hopefully you enjoy it, and let's go ahead and jump into it. Hey guys, I've just created a new Discord server that's open to the public. The goal is to have a place where people can go to help each other out for programming issues, as well as just a place to discuss new ideas and get feedback. I also check in daily. There's a channel to request videos on YouTube and much more. So if you want to check it out, just go to discord.gg/traversymedia. Alright guys, so we're going to get started here. I'm using Visual Studio Code. I'm also using the Live Server extension. If you want that, you can click on the little extension icon, search for Live Server, and just go ahead and install that. Okay, if you're using Atom Live Server is another good option. If you're using XAMPP, just any kind of server you need to use, okay? What else? NPM has a bunch of them. NPM install -g live-server will give you a nice little one, a nice little auto load server as well. So I have a folder here called Fetch Sandbox. I'm going to create an index HTML file. All right, and we're just going to put some basic head body tags and stuff. I use Emmet, so I did exclamation tab. If you want to use Emmet on another editor like Atom or Sublime Text, you'll have to install it as a plugin. So for the title, let's say Fetch API Sandbox. And we're going to, actually, let's first of all just add a button in here. So we'll say button, we'll give it an ID of get text. and let's say get text. All right, now to run this on live server, I'm just going to right click and say open with live server, and that's going to open it up in our browser. All right, so we have our button. Now let's go ahead and put some script tags down here. And we need to add an event listener, so we'll say document dot get element by ID, has the ID of get text, and then we just want to add an event listener. So add event listener. The event we want to listen to is a click, and then we want to run a function called get text. All right, so let's create that function, get text, and let's just do a console.log, and we'll just log. Let's just log 1, 2, 3. All right, so we'll reload. Let's make sure our Chrome tools is open with the console. Click the button, and we get 1, 2, 3. All right, so what we want to do is we want to fetch a text file, okay, asynchronously. So let's create a new file over here, and I'm just going to call it sample.txt. And inside here, I'm just going to say I am a sample text file and save, and we can close that up. Okay, so we're going to call the fetch function here, and then it's going to take in a parameter which is going to be either a URL or a file name, whatever it is you're trying to get. In our case, it's sample.txt. Now, fetch returns a promise. So what that means is it's kind of like a placeholder for the response that we're going to get asynchronously. So to work with promises, we need to use .then. Okay, make sure you don't have a semicolon right here. It just goes .then. If you want to put this on the same line like that, you can do that as well, but I like to put it on a separate line. So this then is going to take in a function, and then let's pass in here res or response, whatever you want to use, and we're going to console.log that res, that response. Okay, so let's save that and click the button, and it gives us a response with some stuff here. Gives us the status. You can see 200. If you watch the Ajax crash course, you know 200 is the status that we want. That means that everything went okay. It found the file or the URL. Gives us status text of okay. Gives us the URL of the file. So just a basic response. Now, what we want to do is we want to get the text. Okay, now there's different, I guess, functions you could call them. So for instance, if we say dot text like that, okay, that's going to give us the response of the promise with the text. You can see right here, promise value is I am a sample text file, whatever is in that file. If this was a JSON, then we would want to do res.json. Okay, now I want to get the actual text, not just this promise status and value. So what we need to do is return this res.text right here, not just log it. So we'll get rid of the console log, and then we'll just say return. All right, and then we need to add another .then. Okay, so .then, and we're going to put a function in here, and then this is going to give us our data. So we can pass in data, and then we can console.log data. Okay, we'll save it, and then we click the button, and now we're getting the actual text that's in the file. All right, so this is cleaner than a standard XHR Ajax request, but we can make it look a little better if you want to use arrow functions. So what I'm going to do just to show you the difference is comment this out, and then we'll do fetch sample.txt, and same thing, we're going to do .then, except we're just going to take the response and we're going to use an arrow right here, and we're going to say we want that to res.text like that, and then we'll do our second .then, and in here we'll take the data and use an arrow function and say console.log data. Oh, that semicolon shouldn't be there. So let's save that and click the button, and we get the same result. So this looks much cleaner than this. Okay, but it's up to you what you want to do. Now, if you want to do something else with the data aside from just logging it with this one line, then you're going to have to set it to a code block or to a set of curly braces. All right, and what I want to do is insert it into the DOM, into the web page. So I'm going to put a div up here with an ID of output. And then in here what we'll do is we'll say document.getElementById output, and let's set that equal to the data. Okay, so now we'll save that, click the button. What did I do? Oh, I forgot to do inner HTML. There we go. So now we're taking that data that's being fetched and we're putting it into the browser. All right, so that's a simple text file. Oh, one more thing. If you want to catch errors with these promises, you can actually add on .catch and pass in error. Actually, what we'll do is say error and set it to an arrow, and then just console.log error. All right, so now let's do a JSON file. So I'm going to create a new file called users.json. Sorry about those freaking seagulls out there. And I'm going to grab, just going to copy this. So this is the same JSON file we used in the Ajax crash course. It's just a couple users, a couple Walking Dead users. And what we'll do is copy, actually let's create a new button. So we'll do button, we'll give it an ID of, let's say, get users. All right, so we'll create another event listener. And this will be get users. It's going to call a function called get users. Let's create that function down here. Okay, actually I need to put in the word function. All right, so let's see, for get users, we're pretty much doing the same thing. So we're going to say fetch users.json, and we want to do, what, I keep spelling fetch wrong. So fetch users.json, then we want to do our .then, and we're going to take the response, and this time instead of setting it to res.text, we're going to do res.json like that. All right, and then we need our second .then, and in here, actually I'm not going to use that semicolon. In here, we're going to get our data, set an arrow function to a code block, and let's go ahead and get ready to put this output into the browser. So we're going to set a variable called output. Notice I'm using let. I'm going to be using ES6 standards in this video. So we'll say let output equals, and let's just make this an h2 to begin with. So we'll say h2 users, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through our result. Actually, you know what, let's console log our result first just so you can see that it actually works. So we'll console log data, let's click get users, and there's our 3 users. Okay, so we're going to loop through these, and I'm going to do it a little different than I did in the Ajax course. We're going to use the for each. Okay, so we can do this with arrays, for each, and then pass in a function, and then we need an identifier. So let's say user. All right, and then for each iteration, we want to add on to that output variable. So we want to add on or append, and we do that with a plus equals. Okay, now I'm also going to use template strings here, so we want to use backticks, not single quotes. These are backticks. These are to the left of your number 1 key. So with template strings, we can just have multiple lines. We don't have to, concatenate with quotes and plus signs and all that. We can just simply put in some HTML here. So let's go ahead and put a UL. We'll close that UL, and we'll put in some LI tags, and in here let's get the ID Now if you want to insert a variable, which we want from this user right here, because it's looping through, and then we can access each user with this. So to put a variable in here, you need to use money sign and then curly braces. See how it changes color? And then we can say user.id. Okay, and we can access any of these values, ID, email, or name. Okay, so we're going to get the ID. We're also going to get the name. So that'll be user.name. And then we're going to get the email. So that'll be user.email. All right, so that's going to get all that stuff in that output variable. Then we want to go outside of the loop, and we want to grab, let's say, document.getElement by ID. We want the output element, and we want to say .innerHTML, and set that to that output variable, and save, get users, and there we go. Okay, so this is a much nicer way of doing it than we did in the Ajax crash course. Okay, but again, these are newer standards, you know, so in my opinion, you need to know both ways. All right, so let's see what else we want to do here. Now let's fetch data from an outside API. So we're going to use this JSON placeholder, and you can fetch posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, and users. We're going to grab some posts. If we click that, you'll see it'll give us 100 posts. If we go all the way down here, you'll see the last one has an ID of 100. So what we want to do is create another button. I'm just going to, let's see, I'll just copy this. So for this one, we'll say, what did I say? Actually, I'm going to change this text to get JSON, and this one will be get API data. All right, and then we'll change this button ID to get posts, and then we want another event listener. You can see the pattern here. So get posts, and we're going to call a function called get posts. All right, let's go down here. And let's actually copy get users because it's pretty similar. So we'll change this to get posts. And instead of fetching, you know, a local file, we're going to grab this URL right here. So we'll copy that, paste that in. Okay, it is JSON, so we want to keep this line. Let's see, we also want for, let's see, the output right here, let's change this to posts. And then in the output, if we look at what we have available, we have an ID, we have a title, and a body. So let's use those. But instead of using a UL here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a div. And later on, we're going to add some Bootstrap classes to these. But we'll have a div, and then we'll do an let's do an H2. Is that what I did? H2? No, H3. And this is where the title will go. So we can use these variables. We can say, let's use post here because the data is not users anymore, it's posts. So we'll change that to post, and we'll say post.title. All right, and then we'll put in a paragraph, and we'll say post.body. All right, and we'll put it in the output. So let's save, let's go back and click that, and you'll see we get all of those posts. All right, so pretty easy. So now what I'm going to do is create a form so we can make an actual post request to the API. So let's see, we're going to put the form, let's see, actually, you know what I want to do is put an HR right here above the output. And under the output, we'll put our form. Okay, so the form is going to have an ID of add post. Okay, and let's see, inside the form, let's put a div. And inside here, we're going to have an input. Let's do input type text. And we need to give it an ID of title. Let's also give it a placeholder of title. And then we'll copy that div. We'll add the Bootstrap stuff later, don't worry. This is going to be body. Actually, this is going to be a text area, so I'm going to change this. Okay, let's change the placeholder to body. Alright, and then we just need an input of submit. We'll give it a value of submit. Alright, so there's our form. Let's save it. It looks horrible, but that's fine. Now we need to add an event listener here. Now this is going to be an event listener for our form. Let's go ahead and copy this. Okay, so remember the form has an ID of add post. So we want to add an event listener, except this time it's going to be a submit, and we want to call add post. Okay, that's the function we want. So let's go down to the bottom here and create a function called add post. Okay, now since it's a form, we're going to pass in an event parameter, and we're going to say e.prevent default, which is going to stop it from actually submitting to a file. Alright, now what we want to do here is we want to get the values of the title and the body fields. So let's create some variables. We'll say let title equals document.getElementById. We gave it an ID of title, and we want to get the value. Okay, let's do the same thing for the body. I'll change this right here to body. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call fetch. Okay, now inside here we're going to put our URL, which is going to be it's going to be the same URL as this that we made the GET request to, because if you look at the routes for this API, you can make a post request to /posts, okay, just like you can make a GET request to /posts. So we'll go ahead and paste that in. Alright, now this is actually going to take a second parameter, which is going to be an object with some stuff here. So we want to add in a method. We want to let it know that this is a post method. Okay, we also want to add in some headers. Alright, so for headers, this is actually going to be an object, and we're going to say accept. So for accept, we want JSON, so application/JSON, and also let's say text/plain, and let's say anything/anything, and then we also want to apply the content type. Okay, so content type is going to be application JSON. Oh, there should be a comma there. Alright, so those are the headers that we need, and then we need a body. Okay, so body is going to be where we apply the data. Now, we have our variables here, but it needs to be inside, it needs to be JSON, so it needs to be inside of curly braces, and then we're going to say title. We'll say title, body. Now we just want to wrap this in a function called JSON.stringify. Okay, which will actually convert it to a string before it's sent. Okay, and then we just need to go down here, and just like we did with all the other requests, we need to do a .then. We're going to set res to res.json, and then we're going to do .then, and we're going to say data, and then we can do whatever we want with the data that is responded. We're just going to log it. Okay, and the response it gives you is the actual post that you're adding. Okay. Alright, so let's see, I think that should do it. So that's a standard post request using fetch. So let's save. Let's go over here and reload for good luck. And let's say title, test, body, and submit. And there we go. So that's our response. You can see it has an ID of 101. Okay, it's not going to get added to right here. You're not going to see it on their site. It's not going to persist to the database, but you see it ends. This ends at 100, so ours is 101. Okay, it just doesn't get persisted. So that's it as far as making our requests. Now there's more to the Fetch API, but I'm not going to get too deep into it. This is just an introductory. Now what I want to do is just make this look a little better with some Bootstrap, just for fun. So let's go to getbootstrap.com and we'll go to get started. We'll grab just the CDN for the CSS. So this link right here, and we'll put that up in our head area. And let's see, what are we going to do here as far as classes? Let's wrap everything in a container. By the way, if you're interested in Bootstrap 4, I do have a Udemy course on it called Bootstrap 4 from scratch with 5 projects. Let's see, we're going to end the div right here. So that wraps everything in a container. All right, and then let's see, we're going to wrap, let's put an H1 right here first of all. Let's give this H1 a class of display-4. I'm also going to give it a class of MB4, which is margin bottom 4, just to push things down. And then we'll say fetch API sandbox. All right, and then all these buttons here, I'm going to wrap in a div. And I'm going to give this div a class of dflex, so we can use flexbox, and that'll just align everything. And then for each button, let's give these some classes. So we'll say btn secondary. Let's also do mr4, which is margin right 4, just to push the next button over. So go ahead and copy that class, paste it in here. Let's change it to success, make it green. Okay, this button here, paste it in. We'll change this one to yellow. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, cool. Actually, the first one I wanted primary, not secondary. I want that to be blue. All right, so that's that. Now for the form, which looks horrendous, let's add to these divs right here a class of form group. And we'll add to these inputs a class of form control. Okay, and the submit, let's add a class of btn and btn secondary, and save, and there we go. Now for the responses, let's go down here. For the get JSON, these users right here, I'm just going to make this UL a list group, give it a class of list group, and then these LIs will give a class of list group item. I'll just copy that. Okay, save that. There we go. So that looks better. Let's also give the UL a class of margin bottom 3. That way they're not right on top of each other. All right, so let's see what else we got here. For the API data, let's go down there, and we're just going to give this div a class of card and card body. Save that, and also let's do MB3. Whoops, what happened? Card. There we go. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, let's give this post, this sh2 right here, we'll give that a class of MB4. Cool. I'll do it to the user's h2 as well. And that's it. So now we have our Fetch API sandbox. Now if you guys want to read more about Fetch and maybe look into doing put requests and things like that, delete requests, maybe use some different APIs if you want. There's some really good public APIs out there. Or maybe even create your own. Maybe use, create an Express Mongoose API or something, some kind of RESTful interface. But that's going to be it for now, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this and you learned a little something about Fetch and maybe a little something about ES6. So that's it, and I will see you in the next video.